What's happening? What's happening? What's happening? Because you know it's your boy B Hot Radio shouting. Hey man, I got a legend stepping off in the building. I'm talking about the Fulton County Commissioner, Marvin Arrington Jr. What's good with it, boss?
Hey, what's up, B Hot? Glad to be here. Thank you for having me, brother.
Man, feeling good, feeling great. Now, I mean, Marvin, first of all, I had a chance to marinate on this documentary right here. This is definitely a life changer. I'm talking about Bowlegs, ATL, the story of Marvin Arrington Sr., an Atlanta story on top of that. Break this down to me, boss.
Hey, it's the Bowlegs, Marvin Arrington Sr. in Atlanta story. It's a rags to riches story of a boy from the projects whose mother was a maid that went on to integrate Emory Law School, serve on the Atlanta City Council, become president of Atlanta City Council, run for mayor, and serve as a judge on the largest bench in the state of Georgia, the Fulton County Superior Court.
What was it in Marvin that allowed him to be so doggone great, man? I mean, what was his ingredients that made him say, you know what, I could be the greatest of all time coming out of Grady Homes?
I mean, I think, he just had a will and a determination to do better. Mm-hmm. In the documentary, he says he was hanging out with the boys, and one day he realized he didn't want to just hang out with the boys anymore. But I think it was really my grandmother, right? Mm-hmm. She was a maid. She worked for a lawyer. My God. And she came home and told my dad, you going to be a lawyer. And as a result, we wound up having 7 lawyers in the Arrington family.
Thanks to grandmama.
Thanks to grandmama being a maid for a lawyer.
My God. I mean, when y'all think about that, man, those humble beginnings to where everybody is in the family right now, how does that make grandma feel? How did grandma feel?
Oh, she was real proud. And, luckily we had some footage. We were able to get archives. And so we have interviews from her in the documentary.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Now, when we talk about Marvin Arrington, he came out of a time that Atlanta was segregated now. So, I mean, how was he able to get his education on and get to the point to where he could facilitate all of the changes that he was able to make?
Well, it was hard. He talks about it in the documentary. He went to 3 different elementary schools, E.R. Carter and others, and went to David T. Howard High School, but wound up graduating from Turner High School. And so segregation was very prevalent, but I think it also brought black people closer together. Black people were more cohesive, if you will, just because it was us against the world, right?
My God,
and then when he took office, so Dr. King got assassinated April of 1968. He ran for office in November of 1968.
Crazy.
Took office January 1969. When he got to City Hall, they still had separate water fountains for white people and colored people and separate bathrooms.
My God.
So you know what a young boy from Grady Homes did.
What'd he do?
He went straight to the white water fountain and said, I dare somebody to say something.
I ain't mad at him at all. But see, that's not the only systems that he was bucking. On the other side of the law thing, man, you was talking to me off air about that. Break that down to me.
Yeah, so he and Clarence Cooper were the first full-time black law students at Emory Law School.
Yeah.
There was another black man, Ted Knight, that actually was the first to graduate from Emory Law School in '65, but he graduated from the part-time night school program. And so they were the first 2 full-time graduates from Emory Law School. After graduating, you go to take the bar exam, and he couldn't pass the bar, and in fact, no blacks passed the bar.
My God.
And so he got with the ACLU, filed a lawsuit against the State Bar of Georgia so that blacks could be admitted to the State Bar and practice law. And, that's just crazy, right? Here's this guy that's graduated from law school, and he's suing all the lawyers in the state.
That's crazy.
And so, he sued. He said he just couldn't believe that, blacks that went to Harvard Law School, Yale Law School, all these other law schools from around the country, smart, and then no one could pass. And so he sued the State Bar so that he and other blacks could be law partners. But then even after that, he went down to file a paper for a client, and the clerk of the court wouldn't accept the paperwork from him. So then he got with Leroy Johnson, who was one of his mentors, state senator. Leroy Johnson was the first state senator elected since Reconstruction from the South in the state of Georgia. Leroy Johnson was a state senator, so Leroy Johnson had the cachet, and he took him down there and said, hey, take this boy's filings.
Exactly.
Right? And so that's why we say an Atlanta story, because there's so many more. The Leroy Johnson story needs to be told.
That's right.
Lonnie King was a student activist in the AUC. He was the one that convinced my dad to run for office in November of 1968.
Yeah.
And so there's just so many more. Lottie Watkins, Louise Watley, right?
Yeah.
There's just so many more people that have contributed to making Atlanta the Atlanta that it is today.
Okay, now, Marvin, when you think about your daddy and those times right there, what was it in the water that allowed all of those people that you were talking about stories to come together and have that camaraderie to make the city great? You see what I'm saying? No one man did it by himself, but how was everybody able to come together and congregate like that to really push the culture forward?
Well, I think they were intentional. I don't think it was by accident. But you're right. I think it was something in the water, something in the air, and frankly, I think it's partly due to the AU Center and the influx of students. You know, you got 5,000 to 10,000 students coming into Atlanta every year, and half of those students are leaving and half are staying every year, right?
Yeah.
And so that brain trust of students from all around the country, I think, is part of it. And when we talk about it in the story, you know, Joseph Lowry is like a block away from our house, and Shirley Franklin is 2 blocks away, and Andy Young is 3 blocks away, right? Hank Aaron is 2 blocks away, right?
Now.
And Keisha and Kasim are maybe 5 or 10 blocks away.
Yeah.
Everybody's kind of like all right there together in Southwest Atlanta.
That's right.
But the one thing that we talk about in there, a lot of people don't know, is Mayor Ivan Allen at the time put up a roadblock to stop black people from going into Southwest Atlanta.
My God.
And so now Southwest Atlanta's all black, right?
Exactly. It's all black.
So God is good, but I think they were intentional. I think they were intentional about being inclusive.
Yeah.
I think that they were intentional about making sure that blacks, women, minorities had opportunities, and I think that's the difference. That is why we are where the Atlanta that we are today.
How did Senior feel as he started to see the city grow and what it became especially entering the 96 Olympics time? From the 60s all the way up into them 90s, it was a lot of transformation going on in this city.
Yeah.
And after 96, it would never be the same again. So how did he feel about the growth in the city? And, you know, what were some of the things that he felt like needed to be going on at that time?
Well, I mean, I think he was involved in a lot of that stuff. He helped save the Atlanta Zoo. At the time, it was... What is it now? At the time, it was the Atlanta Zoo. Now it's Zoo Atlanta, right?
That's right.
And so he came up with the Recreation Authority, got the city out of the business of operating the zoo, because the city doesn't really know how to operate a zoo, right? So you bring in an operator to come in and operate it. But he helped with the Olympics. He was the vice chair of the Olympic Committee.
Yeah.
Helped with the bid to bring it here, and then also helped with making sure things happen. And again, they were intentional. The only people that got property outside of the state of Georgia was the AUC. Clark Atlanta got a stadium.
Yeah.
Morris Brown got a stadium.
Yeah.
Morehouse got a stadium.
Yeah.
So the black schools in the AU Center were the only virtual private entities that really benefited from the Olympics, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure there were other private entities, but directly and by the building of those facilities and stadiums. And so, again, they were just inclusive. They wanted to make sure that everyone was at the table, make sure that black businesses were being supported.
Yeah.
I remember the story about when they were redoing the airport and they needed people, and Maynard said, "Well, we know how to lay we know how to lay concrete. We can do all the runways if nothing else. We're gonna make sure that there are blacks that are included." And he served on the city council under Maynard. he was actually elected 4 years prior to Maynard. Maynard was elected in 72, took office in 73. And so he was elected 68, 4 years before Maynard, worked as Maynard's floor leader through 81 on the city council, then ran for president of city council in 81, served as city council president for 16 years from 81 through 97.
Yeah.
So through the Olympics, he was mayor, and then that's when he ran. He was city council president, and that's when he ran for mayor.
Marvin, what was that like for you, seeing his trajectory growing up in the city of Atlanta and knowing that, what we're talking about at this dinner table is going to affect everybody around here?
It's interesting because as a child, he's just dad, right? You don't really see all of that stuff, or you don't really recognize it. I didn't really realize how special Atlanta was until I went away to school. I went to the University of Virginia undergrad, and I took a civil rights course from Julian Bond. And in that class, everyone that we were reading about, I knew their kids. I knew Andy, I knew Andrew Young and his children. I knew Ralph Abernathy and his children. I knew Joseph Lowry and his children. And so it was then that I realized how special Atlanta was. I had to go outside of the city to really appreciate how special and inclusive the city of Atlanta was.
Now, we were just talking about the 96 Olympics. How do you feel like the World Cup is going to impact Atlanta?
Oh, I think the World Cup is going to be amazing, and I'm real excited about it coming. And, we as a people, as the city of Atlanta and Fulton County, we've got to get ready because these people are coming, and, there's going to be some great opportunities for people to make some money. And we want to
be in on it.
And we want to be in on it. And I think we have, I think Andre Dickens is doing a great job as mayor. I think he's going to make sure that they're inclusive. And Fulton County, we're making sure that there's inclusion. And so we're moving in the right direction for the most part, besides these 2 or 3 crazy people that want to start the city of Buckhead.
Oh, man. I mean, how do you feel about that?
Well, first of all, there's already a Buckhead, Georgia.
Yeah.
First of all, there's already a Buckhead, Georgia, but the city of Buckhead, I think, is a bad idea. I think it's a real bad idea. And I think part of the reason we are the Atlanta that we are today is because we had this slogan, the city too busy to hate.
Facts.
And that is what made us different from Birmingham. That is what made us different from Mississippi.
That's right.
And that is why Atlanta is on a better trajectory than those other cities. And so, I just think it's real important, and we're in a good place because of that.